Fountain of Youth by genetic engineering for humans, or potentially obviously anybody or anything. Dolly the dog. That's... I'll let you run and see if you can make sense of it, but so what? Do I talk this as Gary's idea or mine? I know what Gary would say. It's a horror show anyway, so why do you want to live for 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 years in a horror show for? I don't do the horror show thing. I just go to the futility of it all. So why do I want to do something futile for 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 years? What on earth would I want to do that for? But I'll let you go. Now we're going off into space. From my point of view, what on earth for? It's not getting anywhere. Just because it's going further away, it's not going anywhere. It's not progress. It's what some scientists have called progress. If you can send people to Mars, which they can't do now, they'd say that that's progress. I wouldn't. Because it's not doing anything. It's not achieving any purpose. And it's not that I'm setting the bar high for my definition of achieving purpose with this humanity thing, life thing. I'm setting the bar at, and I'm saying it's impossible. I'm saying it is utterly and totally impossible to do anything constructive with this whole life thing. It is impossible. As far as I can say, okay, you know, there could be somebody out there that can come up with something, but my life experience so far, you know, when somebody has not got anywhere near explaining something to you, and you go, well, and then other people have said things that through the time goes, and to the extent you go, no, it's not going to happen, because nobody's got anywhere near it. Nobody has got anywhere near explaining to me how this life is anything but totally and utterly futile. If you, me, or 25 generations on start living to be 500 years old and going to Mars and back in the morning, or Alpha Centauri, or Planet Zog, so what? That's the thing. So what? It's a complete waste of time. I hate this waste of time because it's a really trapping phrase, and it's me that it traps. But what's the point? What is the point? What's the point of going to the planet Zog? What's the point of getting to the planet Zog in 2.5 seconds and coming back 2.5 seconds later? I mean, there's no point to it all. It's pointless. Life is pointless. And of course we can invent our little points. We're doing it all the time. I often explain this. I mean, I'm really exploring this camera now. I've had the instructions out again. I've been carefully through them. And I was doing video shots up a tape measure to get my focusing right, to see where it prefers to focus, so I can make some nice nature photographs, videos, or video myself better. Or we do all these little things because it temporarily makes us feel better, but it is pointless, as in an ultimate thing. It's got a point for me that it gives me a little ego boost. It gives me a little bit of pleasure. But when what I think is philosophy, which is looking at things in a big way, is philosophy, you know, in a big way. And in a big way, whether I can focus the camera or not on the hummingbird hawk moth and the lavender, it's pointless. It's useless. Absolutely useless. And you can say, you know, you get these knock-on things that people go, they kind of get stuck on that and go, yeah, maybe it is. But then you can teach somebody else to be able to photograph brilliantly hummingbird hawk moths on lavender, and think that that's a point, which obviously it isn't. That is pointless as well. But anyway, I'm taking up too much time. You've summed it up with the expression, life is not necessarily a hopeless endeavour. It depends which way you look at it. I think, looking at it in the philosophical way, repeat, the big way, it obviously is, because it is all pointless. Whether, even if we all live in geodesic domes, loving each other all day long, that is still pointless. Now, I accept, I just got to repeat myself, but from a personal point of view, life doesn't have to be pointless. I don't have to sit there here in misery just going, oh, another YouTube wanker on the YouTubes. That's, I can go out and photograph hummingbird hawk moths on the lavender. But that's a personal point of view. It's not hopeless. But from a big philosophical point of view, I think it obviously is. And then I suppose you'd say then, but then you take all the individuals and they're all doing something hopeful and they're all kind of happily, hopefully doing this sort of stuff. And then that makes the big picture. And I've got to say no, because we're just fucking about. We're just pretending. I'm only doing the thing for the camera to fill time in, to give me a little ego boost in time, because it'll give me a bit more of an ego boost than sitting here watching cats play pianos on YouTube, or whatever it might be, an example of something else, or doing nothing, or having another shower. I mean, just because you get lots of something, it doesn't make it into a big thing, when those lots of little things are pointless in their own little way. I'll let you go again. You might have to explain this bit to me. I'll give it a shot. Socrates and Aristotle, leave Plato out, eh? You jumped him. Were doing things, presumes thou, in a way that was egoless. They were really coldly scientific. But a lot of modern day academia is ego boosting. All I'll say for the moment is, whether it's Socrates or Aristotle or Professor Anton and To Be Serious and their pretend academia stuff, it doesn't really matter because it's all pointless, philosophically. Oh, I get you now. Okay, it's on Gary. Gary. And you're saying that basically he believes in what he's doing. Therefore, it's not just an ego-boosting thing, whereas the Professor Anton, To Be Serious, is representing academia, quoting bits out of various books and people like Socrates and Aristotle to actually be an ego-boosting thing, not a genuine explanation, is a word like that. Talking out of academia is not... Academia, the way it's often put out, is more ego-boosting as opposed to really trying to get real work done. Exposition, I think the word was. I don't know if you are... actually, I haven't even put the video up, so I don't know if I would. Why Gary, and to a degree myself, might be more acceptable to you, where the academics are not, is probably the ego thing, but it's very understandable, because Gary and I are amateurs, so we don't have to pretend to be academics. We don't have to quote all these book ways of saying things. We can just say it as we see it. In an amateur way, and in a way not that's just amateur, but in a way that is more felt, because that is the reasoning that we're doing it, as opposed to the academics who are, to a greater extent, trying to prove something to their peers, their other academics, and presumably to themselves as well, that their academic book learning has been worthwhile. I personally probably think it isn't, unless they're geniuses, and I know I'm not a genius, but that I'm a long way behind. Can't say I've read all these books, 95% of these books, and lots of others. I can't remember a word of them, and I don't think academics can either, unless they make special effort to remember bits out of books. And I think that's what you get from academics, is their pride of being able to regurgitate bits out of books, which doesn't actually make for a coherent picture of anything. What you get from, say, Gary, yourself, or myself, would be what we feel. So we can flow it out, because it just flows out easier, because it just is. It is how we feel it, as opposed to we're not trying to create an image or a picture of ourselves. Or we're trying to do, we're not, obviously we do that in all life. Humans just do that when they communicate. But when it's to a lesser degree, the academics are always having in their mind that they must prove their academic superiority, and we don't have that pressure. Basically, it's easier for us to talk shit, which might come across as more honest, and in a way that might lead to the impression that we are more clinical or ruthless in our scientific endeavour, but I don't know that that actually does follow. Here I think you're making a mistake. I think what you've just said is that Gary is doing the right thing by robust attack of pseudo-academic science, but I think then the next move was an oblique attack to say, but then Gary bases a lot of what he says on pseudo-academic science. Now I think this is, obviously everything's to an extent right, but what I'll do, I'll kind of link Gary and I, so I can talk for myself, and I think I'm talking for Gary at the same time. Let's say on my opening few hundred videos on free will, I would talk in my amateur way, as you rightly point out, about free will from what I call a logical point of view. Not pure logic, because that's probably something in the books, but just logic. Logical, man-to-man sort of, well, what do you reckon? That's that, this is that, well, how could that possibly be that? Sort of logic. And only in extremis would I say, well, look, when it does come down, because people would say this, that, and that, and I'd say, well, when it comes down to it, science actually hasn't found any free will, and they've really been looking for it an awful lot. And I think to a greater extent Gary does this as well. He pushes out the basic, as I've described for me, the basic logic